Hi, and welcome to Running on Carbs Podcast. I am your host, Coach Val, and I would like to welcome you to this episode of the podcast. We are on episode number 34 today, and today we're going to be talking all about plant-based meal prep. And I have got tips for you today. So, this is a tip episode, and I've got 10 tips for meal planning and prepping your healthy plant based meals to support your running and your active lifestyle and just general life as it is, because we are all super busy. And meal prep is a great way to manage your time and make sure that you are getting in the proper nutrition, because you don't leave it to the last minute when you are hungry and you're tired and you're worn out from your day, or you just got back from a long run and again you're tired and wiped out and you got to get a shower and you get your day started. So meal prepping helps you manage your nutrition in a very efficient way to make sure that you're really powering yourself all along. So, today we're going to talk all about that. I'm going to give you 10 of my tips for healthy meal prep. But before we do, I do want to remind you that we are still in World Vegan Month. So, if that is something you're still interested in, I'll leave the link in the show notes if you'd like to sign up for more tips and recipes and information about World Vegan Month. If you want some help getting started, World Vegan Month is all about just swapping out one meal a day with a 100% plant based meal. So, if you're new to the plant based lifestyle, this is a great way to just sort of, as I put it, run, walk, run your way to a vegan plant based diet. So, if you're interested, the link is in the show notes and you're welcome to sign up. But otherwise, this is really kicking off the start of a series of podcast episodes that I'm going to be doing surrounding healthy eating, plant based nutrition, really valuable efficiency tips on how to incorporate it into your life. How to manage a plant based lifestyle with your running and active lifestyle. So, this is just the first of a few episodes that I'll be recording. And it really just is kind of timely, being that we're in November. So, we are in the season of food and family, going into Thanksgiving and then into Christmas holidays and other holidays and the new year. So, this is really just the time of the year where families get together surrounded by food. And that could be a real challenge if you are new to the plant based lifestyle. So, I'm going to do a series of podcast episodes to help and support you through that time. And maybe even if this isn't your first year as a plant based individual, there's always something we can pick up from each other. So, hopefully, you'll find the next few episodes really valuable and helpful. Today, though, we're going to talk about those tips. But before we do, don't forget that if this is helping you, or if it can help a friend of yours or someone you know, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or click the little bell to subscribe on any of those channels or platforms. It really helps the episode and it helps the show itself to grow and reach new audiences. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. And also, I want to bring your attention to the show notes, because there is a free download in the show notes that this episode will support. So I put together a weekly meal planner calendar for you, and it breaks out each meal by the macronutrients that are necessary in a plant-based meal, to make sure that you're getting a very balanced variety of foods. So go on to the show notes. There's a link there. It'll take you to the download page, super simple, and download that free calendar and use that to help support you when you are making these meal plans, and to help you in your planner for every week. So you just print it out and every week fill it out to support your meals, and you can fill it out as far as like what your protein is, what your carb is, et cetera, et cetera. Very good planner, especially if you like pen and paper. But I'll give you some other options too. But definitely, if you like those planners, it's a nice planner. It's real pretty. I designed it, so I hope you like it. All right. Anyway, let's jump into the episode because I've got 10 tips. So first of all, why do we meal prep? I know I covered a little bit of that, but number one, it just saves time. I mean, that's primarily why I started meal prepping is it just saves time. And meal prepping doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to take hours and hours of your time. And I'll go through some tips about how to simplify it, but it's much easier when you meal prep and you plan ahead just a little bit. It helps to keep you on track with that plant-based diet and with the healthy diet in general. And it also helps you avoid those hangry runner syndromes. When you get back from a run and you're really hungry. I know sometimes you get back from a run, you're not hungry. But, what's worse is when you get back from a run and you are absolutely hangry, you just want to eat everything in sight. And of course, you never want the healthy stuff at that point. And the healthy stuff is too hard to put together and to make because it seems like healthy food always takes longer to prep than the simple snacks that you just grab out of the cupboard and start eating. So, we want to really support your runs through your nutrition. And the best way to do that is to plan ahead. And so that's why meal prepping is so useful. And it also helps when you prep your meals to really help you affirm that you are getting the right balance of macronutrients that your body needs. And this could be true for any type of diet, of course. But on a plant based diet, we're just more cautious and and aware of our macronutrient makeup because in a plant based diet, it's so much easier to get a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of the foods like vegetables, fruits, grains, all of these are very high in carbohydrate. And some of them are not quite as high in protein or in fats. So you may find that getting fats on a whole food diet or a plant based diet is actually a little harder to do. And you have to be more conscious about adding in fats and adding in proteins to make sure that you have the proper balance. And so having a meal plan helps you see that out in front of you before you start eating throughout the week. And also, as always, we want to avoid injury. And proper nutrition truly helps us to avoid injury because it makes sure that we are fueling our body with the proper nutrients that it needs to rebuild, to stay strong, to make sure our bones are strong, and to get the proper nutrients that are necessary, especially when we have such a high impact activity that we love to do, and it's so regular. Usually runners are not just running, here and there. There's consistency in what we're doing in that high impact activity. So we really got to make sure our nutrition is right on point in order to avoid injuries. So that's why we meal prep. Now let's talk about the actual tips. So, tip number one, plan to succeed. Start your planning for the following week about a day or two before you actually do your grocery shopping. And the reason for this is that you want to make sure that you have enough time, number one, to plan or adjust and make your shopping meal list and get everything together, see what you have in your cupboard, and then what meals are you going to make for that week. And so you want to kind of start that a couple days ahead of time. What I do in that works with my schedule is I will do my planning on Friday, like Friday evening, and then I will do my shopping on Saturday, and then I'll do my actual meal prep on Sunday for the following week. And that just works for me because I'd rather spread it out a little bit over each of those days rather than trying to just spend an entire day of my weekend, planning, shopping, cooking. So I would rather do an hour here and an hour there. Um, and then that way it all gets done, but I don't feel like it's overwhelming my life. So works for me. Try it out, see if that works for you too. But either way, just try to pick something that works with your schedule. All right, tip number 2. Know your goals at the beginning of the week, like your macro makeup for the week, your energy needs. What are your workouts going to look like that week? What does your schedule look like? Do you have a lot of meetings during the week? All of these things really play into what your meal prep will look like. So, first off, talking about workouts, um, really know what your workout volume looks like. Are you in the middle of a marathon training plan and at your peak week? Your meal plan is going to look very different than, say, you're in a base building phase and you are doing just low mileage and some strength work. So, very different energy needs. And so, your meal prep is going to look different between those types or those time frames of your life. So, high intensity runs versus heavy lifts. How many days a week are you in this heavy activity? That will also play into this. It doesn't mean that you have to have different meal makeups or macro makeups every single day, but you may find that you might need a little bit more one day. Like, for example, if you're doing um, a heavy run that day, you might want to add a snack before your run, and then you may want a snack after your run, and then you'll have lunch or breakfast or whatever. So you may add in an extra snack on those days, and then you just have to kind of consider, what your energy needs are going to be. Very different, like if you're doing a cutback week in the middle of a plan. Again, it doesn't mean you're gonna cut back all of your macros and your calories and your energy needs, but you may adjust it, based on what you're doing that day or that week. Another thing is, the meetings. Those really throw a wrench. Last week, I had 2 pretty much all-day meetings in the middle of the week, and that really threw off my planning. Well, I had planned for it, but it would have fully thrown off my planning had I have not had a plan. So to know what your schedule looks like, maybe you won't be able to take a salad for lunch because you've got a meeting and it's really hard to eat a salad while you're in a meeting versus maybe bringing a wrap. So that kind of thing. Um, and maybe you're not at home to eat, maybe you're on the road. So, all of these things really factor into it. So, you really got to know what your week looks like as you do your planning those days before. So, you know what to shop for and what you're going to prepare. All right, tip number 3, count the number of each meal during the week and each snack that you're going to need. You really have got to have an idea, like, again, going back to those meetings. Maybe you only need 4 lunches that week. You don't need a fifth lunch because you are going to be eating out with coworkers that day. So you don't need to have a fifth lunch that week, for example. So, kind of have an idea of how many you need so you know how much to prep and prepare. Um, Also note the meals that you're gonna need to adjust, due to your schedule. So, again, it's hard to eat salads when you are on the road going to and from meetings. You might wanna just bring a sandwich instead so you can eat that in the car or something along those lines. Or maybe, if you have a snack that you usually go to, um, let's say you do apples and peanut butter. Well, again, it's kind of hard to eat peanut butter on apples when you're driving. So maybe that day you bring nuts and apple slices instead. But again, you need to kind of plan that out and have an idea of what your schedule looks like so you know what you need to bring and also what you need to buy that week. Um, Note the days that you'll need to adjust your portions or macros due to either workout days or rest days. So, for example, and this is a little different than in tip number 2. So, for example, if you have a rest day, you're not going to need a snack that morning. Before your work, like a pre workout snack. So you can use those calories, macros, etc., later in the day in other meals rather than setting those aside for a pre-workout snack. So, knowing what your workout schedule looks like is good so you can plan out the rest of the day's meals and they'll still fit your macronutrients and energy makeup that you need. And then again, like we were saying earlier, you might want an extra snack on those days when you have those hard workouts. You may want to build that in instead of having an extra over and above your macro count. You might want to just adjust other meals and then add in a snack that makes up the difference. So, again, making those adjustments as you go, but seeing that on the calendar early in the week before you get into your week will really help to keep you on track. One thing that I like to use to keep me on track, I'm all about technology. So I know in the beginning of this, I said I've got this great printable calendar, and I love my printable calendar. But on the other hand, it's very helpful to use an app when you are planning your meals. So you can combine the two a little bit, like use the printed calendar to maybe plan out in general, and then use the app to verify your macro counts. Or you can verify your macro counts and then write it on the on the calendar on the printable, and then have the printable up on the fridge or somewhere where you can see it. So it's quick to be able to reference it while you're actually making your meals during the week. And so you know what to grab and that type of thing. So you can use them in tandem as well. But the app that I use personally, I like it. It's a great app. It's called Macro Factor. And I can probably put a link in the show notes to that as well. It's a paid app. There might be a free version, or I think there's a free trial. So if you want to use the free trial and test it out, you can. I get no money from it. I'm just simply sharing it because it's something that I enjoy using, that I've used for a couple of years now, like 3, 4 years. So anyway, it's called Macro Factor. It's $72 per year for the app. And I like it a lot more than the paid version of MyFitnessPal. And MyFitnessPal is actually a little more expensive than Macro Factor if you're going to buy the paid version. But in Macro Factor, you can build recipes. It gives you, there's a big database, similar if you have used MyFitnessPal, it's similar in that it has a big database of foods that are already in there with all of the macronutrient breakdown and energy nutrient breakdown, like the micronutrients, things like that. And there's a lot of packaged meals, not packaged meals, but packaged foods in there also. I don't use a lot of packaged foods, but it also has a barcode scanner. So if you have a food that isn't in there you can't find, you can just scan the barcode and it'll add it in. And then you can create your own recipes and save your recipes in there as well, which I love to do. And it's really easy to change the ingredients in them or to make a copy of a recipe. So if there's, like, for instance, I have a California roll bowl that I like to make, but sometimes I make it with brown rice, sometimes I make it with black rice, sometimes I use a cup of edamame, sometimes I use 3/4 of a cup. And so it's really easy to adjust those recipes based on what I'm doing that week and adjust the recipe for that meal that week. And so anyway, it's a nice little feature of it. So anyway, there's some free versions of things you can use, but that's my favorite is the Macro Factor. Chronometer is another one. I was never really sold on Chronometer as far as the ease of use. I know a lot of people really like that app. I tried it several times. It was just too clunky and it didn't work for me. So um, I don't know if you have any other good ones that you like, let me know what they are because I love checking them out because I'm always looking for the biggest and the best. So let me know if there's other apps out there that you really like too. All right, so a bonus app though. Here's another one that I also pay for, and I don't pay for a lot of apps, but there are just a couple. I probably pay for, like, I don't know. I think these are probably the only 2 apps that I actually pay for. So the second app that I use that you might like is called AnyList. And AnyList is a grocery list app, but it's more than that. You can if you use the paid version, which is only $9.99 a year for a single use or single version, so just for yourself. If you want a family version, it's $14.99 a year. But I'm the only one who shops in the house, so I just have the one. So it's $10 a year for me. And I can create my grocery lists, and there's lots of lists. You can have as many lists as you want, I think. So I've got like one for Costco, I've got one for my groceries, and I've got a packing list in there that I like to keep for when I'm going to go to a race or something. Then I've got a packing list that I created. So it's just all sorts of lists. But if you use it as a grocery list, you can add your groceries to it. And you can also, this is my favorite feature, you can go to the web, and if you see a recipe that you like on the web, you can import that recipe into the app. And then what it does is it reformats it into the app's format, and you can follow the recipe. So it'll incorporate the ingredients, and it'll have little check boxes so that you can check off the ingredients as you add them into your recipe. And there's also the steps to building a recipe and making it that you can go through as well. As you're making your recipe, you can follow the steps. Another nice feature of that is that if you want to make a recipe, you can add it to your calendar. And then when you go to create your grocery list, you can go to the recipes in your calendar or wherever, and say add to list. And then you can add it to whichever list you want. So like I'll add it to my grocery list. And then it'll only add the amount that is in that recipe. So if you need half an onion, for example, it's going to add onion. And then there's going to be like a little subline that says half red onion for whatever soup, whatever your soup is. So you'll remember, you'll be reminded, oh yeah, I need half an onion for that soup. So anyway, you don't overbuy. That's what I like about it, is that if you only need a half a cup of something and you're at the grocery store and you're looking at, different size packages of something or different size vegetables, if you look at your list and you only need a small amount, then you'll remember and go, oh, I don't need the big package. I can just get away with this little one. It's something that I like because I'm really notorious personally for over shopping, and it's such a waste of food. And I always kick myself, especially when it comes to things like vegetables or fruits or things that are perishable, and or things that I just won't use very often after that recipe. And so I like being reminded of how much I need of something, especially if it's a recipe I haven't made before, so I don't really know off the top of my head how much of that ingredient I may need. So if I can be reminded, oh, you only need a teaspoon of this, then I won't buy this massive package, and then get home and realize that I've got, something for the rest of my life and it's going to go bad. So anyway, quick tip on that. So that's called AnyList Complete. So the complete one is the paid version. There is a free version, but it has a little fewer features on it. And I think you're limited to how many recipes you can import with the free version. But you can try it out. So that would, definitely try it out, see what you think of it. All right, tip number 4, don't reinvent the wheel. All this has been done, so don't just start over and recreate everything and make life hard for yourself. Have your go-to meals, like in your app, for example, if you're using the app, have your go-to meals there. Um, don't feel like you have to constantly be adding new foods or that you can't eat the same thing more than once in a week. I know some people don't like to eat the same thing every day, and that's fine if you are that way. Just make smaller portions, and maybe don't make it every day, but have maybe 3 meals. And so you'll eat it 3 times that week, sometime during the week. And then you'll have other things the other, 3 or 4 times a week. But mix them up, mix up, even though if you have some go-to meals, mix them up each week and don't go back to the same things over and over either. So it's like we want variety, but not too much variety because we're trying to save time. Um, but we do need the variety because you have to get different nutrients into your body. And if you are eating the same exact thing all the time, then your body is not getting the variety of nutrients that it needs. So we do need to mix it up a little bit. But if you have some like go to meals, if you have a half a dozen of those, let's say, then you're going to have some good variety if you've got half a dozen for, each meal of the day and then maybe a few different snacks. So have some go-to meals, don't recreate the wheel, but mix them up during the week and during the month. Um, may have your go-to snacks or pre-workout snacks that or try to have your go-to snacks pre-set. So, for example, it just makes life so much easier and prepping so much easier. So I eat beets, red beets, as my pre-workout snack. And then I have maybe a couple of graham crackers, just sort of depending on the intensity of that workout and how long my run is. But I typically eat beets as my pre workout snack all the time. And so I have my beets prepped, cut, chopped, ready to go in a big glass bowl in the fridge. And then I just measure out I usually have like 5 ounces it just seems like the right amount for me. So I'll measure out 5 ounces into a little bowl, put a couple teaspoons of my balsamic vinegar on it, and there's my snack. Super simple. Takes me like 3 minutes to prep my snack because everything's all ready to go. Um, I also love a Nellie's bar. It's my one like indulgence. A Nellie's peanut butter chocolate bar. It actually is a high protein bar. Um, after my long runs. So it's like my little mini reward that I give myself after long runs. So that is my go to snack after a long run. Um, I also like to have edamame as a snack. It's high protein, super easy to prep, and also travels well because you can do either the dry roasted edamame beans that are crunchy, so it's like a crunchy snack, or I use the frozen edamame that are they're already deshelled and are shelled, deshelled? I don't know. Anyway, they're not in the shell. They've already taken them out of the little pods, and I run them under some cold water and I eat them cold as a snack. And I'll do one of those along with something else with it. Um, but those are really easy snacks. They don't take hardly any prep at all except for to measure out whatever I'm going to have that day, and then maybe defrost the frozen ones if I'm eating the frozen ones. But they're very flexible snacks. So if I'm, sitting at my desk, I can do the frozen ones. If I'm in the car, running around Southern California somewhere, then I could use the dry roasted ones. Or if I'm in a meeting and it's snack time, then I can eat the dry roasted edamame in a meeting too. So those are really flexible, and it's good to know what snacks you're going to have them prepped and ready to go, and have something kind of simple for a snack. But always trying to get that protein in at the snack time. And that's something that plant-based people can sometimes have a little challenge with. So again, knowing those higher protein snack options is good before you're in the position to be hungry and want a snack. Um, but I definitely mix up my snacks. Like another favorite one that I'll just give you a little tip on if you haven't seen it. I used to really like Greek yogurt. I like the texture of Greek yogurt. Not so much the flavor. It was very sour. I don't know what the right term is for that, um, but Silk makes a Greek yogurt style coconut yogurt. and it doesn't taste like coconut, but it's coconut based. And it's much thicker than other yogurts, and sometimes that's a problem. Like, the other yogurts are just so thin, um, and then they're also full of sugar. And the Silk, probably has a bit of sugar in it, I'm sure it does, but it's not as much as the other brands and other textures of yogurt. So, if you like yogurt, kinda keep an eye out for that one. I can vouch for it. I usually eat the vanilla flavor, and then I'll put some hemp seeds in the yogurt, and it kinda adds more texture and also some more protein boost. So, there's a little tip for you if you like yogurt. All right, tip number 4, moving right along. Use an online grocery shopping service if it's available to you. I shop at Sprouts, which I'm not sure if Sprouts is national or not. I believe they're somewhat national. I know they're in a number of other states besides California, but I don't know if they're national. But anyway, if your grocery store locally has an online shopping option and someone will just do your shopping for you after you order your groceries, I highly recommend that. Um, my store has gotten much better. It's not 100%. I will admit. There are times that I will order English cucumbers, pick up my order, get it home, and find that there are just plain old regular traditional cucumbers. I don't even know what you call them. And I don't like those. So, um, or I'll order green curly kale and they will give me dinosaur kale. But or they'll be out of something, and that's always frustrating. So, I mean, there are some downsides to online grocery shopping, but I would say now they've got it about 90%. That's pretty high. So it's pretty good. And for me, some grocery stores I think will do the service for free. Um, at Sprouts, they charge me $1.99. Personally, how the amount of time it would take me to go to the grocery store, do all the shopping, have all the temptations that go along with being in a grocery store with every food imaginable, um, and the time it takes to do the shopping, check out, drive home, all that, blah. $1.99, my time is worth that. So it is well worth that $1.99 to have somebody else do that shopping for me so I can just come by, pick it up, and leave. So think about it. It's a big time saver. Also, it does remove those temptations when you are in a grocery store, and especially if you are newer to the plant based lifestyle. This could be very helpful if temptation is a challenge for you. But this could just be very helpful if you are tempted in general when you walk through a grocery store and you see, these packaged foods, or you start thinking, oh, I might need to buy this thing, or I can't remember if I have this at home in the cupboard. And then, of course, you come home and you have 6 of them in your cupboard because every time you go to the grocery store, you forget you already bought it the last time because you thought you didn't have it. I tend to do that myself. Can you tell? So sometimes we just don't know what's in our cupboard. But if we're home and we're ordering online, we can get up and go look in the cupboard and go, oh, I've got 5 of these. I don't need 6. So it really helps. It helps you save money in that sense. You don't overbuy things when you shop online because you can double check and you know how much you need. If you need to double check a recipe, you can double check and see how much do I need. Order just the amount that you need if it's available. Um, and you don't overbuy, and then you don't find that waste food also. There's nothing worse than, buying a bunch of stuff, having it sit in your refrigerator and realize that you over purchased, or you purchased something that doesn't fit your macros that week, and so it goes bad in the fridge because you don't want to throw your diet off, and you didn't want to eat that just because it was going to go bad. You'd rather stay on plan to support your fueling. Uh, so, anyway, big proponent of online shopping for a number of reasons. All right, tip number 5. Number 5, When planning meals, make sure you're adding in texture and flavor variety with regard to your protein choices for your meals. So, for example, I also like to mix up protein sources. Now, I do get a lot of soy in my diet, but soy is not a bad thing. There are a lot of great studies surrounding soy. Now, make sure you get the right soy, but for the most part, soy in the United States and the foods that we are consuming, as long as you're not eating the, heavily processed soy additives, if you're eating the whole food soy, try that again, like tofu, edamame, tempeh, those kind of whole food sources or very minimally processed food sources, soy is actually very protective, especially for women in perimenopause and menopause. So, it can really help with those symptoms. Um, so don't be afraid of soy unless you have a medical reason to avoid it. But even then, I would hope that you've talked to a dietitian instead of simply avoiding a very otherwise healthy food source. So consider that. Don't listen to the old studies that said, soy caused all these problems. Though a lot of those studies were debunked over the years. So make sure you're really considering the more recent current studies and science surrounding soy foods. So, in my diet, I still try to have more variety, even if I do get a lot of soy. I try to have different types of soy or different types of protein sources. So, for example, in the morning, maybe I'll do a soy tofu, so just a traditional tofu scramble, and I'll have a tofu scramble with some veggies and toast with avocado. So that'll be a nice breakfast. And then at lunch, I might have a bean chili. So I'll get a lot of protein through the beans in that chili with maybe a side salad or some veggies on the side. And then for dinner, I might have a fava tofu, which is fava beans. So fava bean tofu, which is very high in protein and low in carbs and anything else. I think there's no fat, no carbs, but it's very high in protein because of the way that it's made. Or I'll have some seitan, so maybe a seitan steak, veggies, and something, you know, over it or over some noodles or something like that. So really mixing up and having variety throughout the day with my protein sources, and then of course adding in all the veggies uh, and starches and things like that with it. But this is also why I really recommend having that app, because in the Macro Factor app, for example, or any meal planner app, you're going to see your day laid out with all your different meals. And then each meal is going to have your calories, fats, protein, carbohydrates, and maybe fiber even, all broken out so that you can see the breakdown of macronutrients and you can really visually quickly see in your day what are your different protein sources for that day. Are you getting a good variety? Are you eating the same meals over and over again? But it helps you visually see that, so that if you realize, oh, I've got, tofu for lunch, I've got tofu for breakfast, and then at dinner, I added tempeh. Well, that's a lot of soy, and as much as I like soy, maybe that's not quite enough variety. Maybe you can, swap out the tempeh in the evening for seitan instead or something like that. It just helps you have more awareness around what the makeup is for your day. One way to like switch up flavors though, is sauces and spices. And I did a whole episode a while back about spices. But I like making different sauces as well because they could fully change your whole meal. So one example is I made seitan steaks, seitan and lentil steaks. I think they were called Salisbury steak, but that was only because it also had a recipe for a mushroom gravy. So you make the seitan steaks and then you make a mushroom gravy that goes over it. Absolutely delicious, by the way. I love that recipe. But there's only so many I can eat of those. And so what I did was instead of using the gravy, I cut up the steaks and I put them over some noodles. And then I made a cheese sauce, which is not really cheese. It's a vegetable cheese sauce that you make in the Instant Pot. So it's a vegan cheese sauce. And then I poured that over it. And I had a totally different meal, even though my protein source remained the same. It really was simply because I put a different sauce over it. I used a vegan cheese sauce as opposed to a mushroom gravy. Made a totally different meal. So, but even though the two sauces really are similar macro makeups, um, it made a totally different meal. So keep that in mind. Look at sauces as an option to add variety also to your meals. All right, number 6, batch cook your meals by importance to you. And this really comes down to you don't necessarily have to batch cook or pre-make every single meal that you're going to have that week. So, what meals are most important to you? Like for me, for example, dinner is most important. That's the one where I am most tired during the day. And that is the one that I'm most likely to get off track if I don't have it prepped. So pick that meal and make sure that you prep that meal first when you do your meal prep. So if you're prepping on a weekend and you're limited on time, go for the meal that is going to be hardest for you to maintain if you get busy. My second one would be lunch, but so then I would do lunch next, for example. And again, you don't have to prep the whole meal. Sometimes just prepping certain ingredients is all you need to do. So I like to make these veggie tacos, which are roasted cauliflower and broccoli, and then I put some sort of protein, like maybe either refried beans or I'll add in soy curls, marinated soy curls, something like that. I only really need to prep the roasted veggies because that takes the longest. And the soy curls, I could just, rehydrate really quickly, toss in a pan, cook them up in 5 minutes. So I don't have to prep those. You could if you want to. And if that's, if you really live on time or if you have to take it to go, you may want to prep it. But for my everyday meals, I don't necessarily have to prep the soy curls, but I do need to prep the vegetables because who has an hour at the end of the day to roast a bunch of vegetables? So kind of thinking ingredients versus whole meals sometimes it makes life a little easier. If you have a rushed morning, maybe breakfast is your day or your meal of the day that's hardest for you. Overnight oats, if you're an oatmeal person, so simple. Prep a couple of days of overnight oats, stick them in the fridge. Again, you don't have to prep everything, but stick them in the fridge and then just maybe prep 3 days at a time, every couple days. Super simple. And then that way you're making sure you have your breakfast. If you do your runs in the morning, early and then you come back and get your breakfast before you run out the door for work, then that's a really easy one. You can take it on the go if you even need to. All right, so that leads me to tip number 7. And tip number 7 is you don't have to prep the whole week on one day. So you can spread your meal prep out over the week. So, for example, most weeks I will just prep a few days worth of food and then I will prepare easier meals or ingredients about halfway through the week. So I might prep my more complicated meal on the weekend or more ingredients on the weekend, and then later in the week, Thursday or something, I'll do some simple meals where I have very minimal prep that I need to do, and I'll just do 2 or 3 or 4 meals or something, depending on what it is, later in the week. So if you have the time for that, that's a good way to split it up. And it also helps to give you variety, like we were talking about earlier, in your meals. So sometimes it's just really hard to make 6 or 7 days worth of a meal, especially if you're not doing something big like a crock pot soup or something like that. Um, those pans get massive. It's a lot of ingredients that you have to make, and you don't want it to go bad before the end of the week either. So that's an option. And then supplement your prepared meals with fresh foods, like, for example, a side salad. Or for me, every day I have steamed kale with my breakfast. And so I always steam my kale that morning and then I add it to whatever breakfast I'm having that day. And then if you are batch cooking, make a double batch of things that will freeze well. So if you're making waffles, do a double batch of waffles and then freeze some of them. They're so easy. They make toaster waffles if you do that. So then all you have to do is toss them in the toaster when you're ready to eat. Tofu bites, like veggie tofu bites, they're kind of like egg bites, but you use tofu instead. Those freeze really well. I made a bunch of those not too long ago, and I just froze them in gallon-sized bags in the freezer, pulled them out in serving sizes whenever I needed them, and they were really easy breakfasts to have like on the go. Soups, chilies, those seitan steaks that I was talking about, I made a double batch of those. So I had 12 steaks when I made those, and I just froze a bunch of them. I think I still have a couple in the freezer. And those are really great because you can use them as just like a whole steak, or you can chop them up and add them into other meals, like I said, on pasta or something like that. And then also you can make like seitan chunks. You can also just buy them in the store, but homemade is always better, right? So if you make these seitan chunks, you can just freeze them, pull out whatever you need for a recipe, and off you go. And now you've got a meal. If you've got some, you know, veggies, seitan chunks, and a gravy or something, you got yourself a meal. All right, number 8, we're getting there. Avoid or limit highly processed foods. And I think it almost goes without saying, but not really. And when I say highly processed foods, I'm not talking about the minimally processed, like the tofu and tempeh and stuff. I'm talking like the frozen vegan meals, the stuff that has like 1,200 milligrams of sodium in what they call a serving, which is probably like, I don't know, half a meal, really. So those kind of things, those frozen meals. It's fine to have some things sort of as a go-to if you're pressed for time, you didn't have time to meal prep. I'd be very careful though about what it is that you bring into your house when it comes to highly processed foods, because once it's in your house, it'll eventually be in your body. So again, that kind of goes back to shopping online rather than in the store with all that temptation, like these frozen pizzas and things like that. They look really good on the shelf, but I mean, do you really feel good after you eat it? And then do you really want to go for a run after you eat that? Is it powering your run? Is it really fueling you? So help yourself make good choices. And that's why, I recommend the online shopping rather than in the store. Um, Protein bars, that's another one that can be kind of sneaky. There are some good protein bars that have some whole food ingredients in them, but really read the label carefully and know what's in your protein bar, your snack bar. Sugary protein powders, those can really hide some nasty ingredients also. So again, in whatever protein powder you might choose to have, make sure you're looking for high quality ingredients in there, and that there aren't a bunch of additives or sugars and things like that. Another thing to watch for are processed cereals and snack foods. Even though it might be vegan, it doesn't mean it's healthy. There's a lot of vegan foods that are not healthy. So, again, really be aware and make sure you're reading the labels. Um, High sodium, preservatives, fats, excess ingredients. Those are all the things you're looking for on those. On the other hand, tip number 9 can still save you time without the highly processed part. So, tip number 9 is stock your freezer and pantry with some quick ingredients. And what I mean by that are things like frozen vegetables or frozen fruits. Flash frozen fruits and vegetables are just as healthy as the fresh counterpart. Sometimes they can actually be more healthy because they're flash frozen and they didn't have to go through the travel process to get to the store shelf, because they're losing their nutrient value as they travel. So there could be something said for frozen as well. But those are your go to. Um, I'm tired and I don't have anything prepped. Those are your go-to options and ingredient choices. Frozen vegetables, things like that. Even canned vegetables are fine. You may want to rinse them because of the sodium levels, but canned vegetables are a great option as well. And boxed soups occasionally. I kind of stay away from the canned soups, but some of the box soups are a little better. Again, it goes back to read the ingredients, and I would say a box soup over a frozen meal is probably better, um, in the majority of the circumstances. But box soups, I wouldn't say would be like a staple item, but if you are, dead tired or you have no lunch or something, or you're on the go, they're a really great option, because there are some very high quality soups that you can buy. I think it was Dr. McDougall has a box soup. Those are really good and high quality ingredients. There's a number of other brands also. So it's nice to keep a couple of those on hand for emergencies. But it's just not something that you go to every single day. But they are nice to have stocked and ready so that you can make better choices than you would if you didn't have it and then you had nothing in your house and now you're headed to like takeout or order in or something. And then look for quality ingredient cereals also with as whole food option or ingredients as you can find. Those are also good to have on hand, especially like for snacks or breakfast, quick breakfast or something like that. All right, so our last tip, tip number 10. Tip number 10 is keep your recipes simple. Um, There's a time and a place, I think, for complicated recipes. In your normal everyday meal prep, this is probably not the place. I would say save your more complicated recipes for special events, occasions, holidays, things like that. Um, or if you just really love and enjoy cooking, then go for it because you're probably always in the kitchen anyway. But then you probably don't need a lot of these tips either because it's just like what you do. But for the rest of us out here in the world, us mere mortals, who don't like to spend their life in the kitchen and maybe don't like to cook very much, I'll raise my hand to that. Um, I just keep the recipes very simple. Minimal ingredients, everyday type of ingredients, things like that, stuff you have around the house, stuff that you would keep in the house anyway. And then use tools to help you be more efficient. So, for example, I live in my Instant Pot, basically. I love my Instant Pot, and I'll make all sorts of different kinds of chilies in it, soups, sauces, anything I can make in the Instant Pot, I will make in the Instant Pot. If I'm going to make baked sweet potatoes, I will put them in the Instant Pot far before I put them in the oven. I might slice them up and put them in the oven because then they cook faster. But if I'm going to make a whole sweet potato, I will just toss that sucker in the Instant Pot and turn it on and set it and forget it. I also make my beets in the Instant Pot. Same thing. I just wash them off. I don't know. I think my sister said she didn't even used to wash them because she was just going to peel them anyway. I don't know. I wash them. I wash them, cut off the little tails, toss them on the little trivet with some water in the bottom. Depending on how big they are, set the timer for that, and then come back an hour later, and there you have beets, and I just peel them off, peel off the skin, and they're super easy to peel. If you have cooked them in the Instant Pot, usually the skin just like slides right off. So anyway, if you like beets, Instant Pot is your go-to machine for that. And then the last part of that tip is to immediately, if you make a recipe, like batch cook a recipe that has, let's say, 4 servings in it, immediately measure out your 4 servings. Use a food scale to make sure that you have even ingredients, and then put them in separate containers for those meals. And then put those in the fridge and just do it right then. I have found a couple of things when it comes to meal prepping a meal like that. I used to measure out like how many meals this is, and I'd weigh the whole thing in grams. So I'd get the total weight, and then I would put a note like in my phone, and I would divide it by 4 and say, okay, every meal is going to be, this amount of grams. The thing is that it's science, I guess. It changes weight. So as the food cools, I guess as condensation builds, I don't know, moisture, I'm not exactly sure the science part of it, but I can tell you that I measured it out when I cooked it, and it said it was, this amount times 4 equaled the total amount of food I made. But when I come back to it the next day and I wanna measure out my meal, I go and take out the same amount of weight, and what is left is totally different. It is no longer 2 more servings. It's usually like 1 and a portion. It's not like a full 2 servings. Like, the weight changes when you put it in the refrigerator, um, and it's all together. So that's why I'm saying that when you make a meal that has several servings, it's better to divide it out now, because the weight is going to change once it cools and once it's in the refrigerator, if it's all packaged together or stored together. So divide it out, put it in your separate meal containers, and then that way it's measured out properly from the get-go. So just a little tip that I learned along the way with meal prepping. I like sticking it in a big bowl and just scooping it out, but your serving sizes are going to be off, and sometimes considerably off from what I've learned. So there you go. There are your 10 meal prep tips for being a plant-based runner. I hope you found that very helpful and informative, and you got something from it, whether you got something from all 10 tips or maybe just a few of them or even just one. Hopefully that was helpful and interesting to you. And go off and meal prep, and don't forget, download the weekly meal planner, whether you stick it on your fridge or you use that as your primary paper pen planner. Please download it, enjoy it. Like I said, I designed it, so I hope you like it. Even just download it just to see what it looks like and tell me if you like the design. I used all my brand colors, so I liked it. I thought it was cute. Anyway, go and enjoy. Meal prep away. Let me know how it's going over on Instagram. I'm at running.on.carbs on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, all the fun places. So come over there, chat with me, tell me how your meal prep is going. And then look for the future episodes that I will be putting out between now and the holidays, all about different plant-based eating, family, holidays, all the fun dynamics. So all right, everybody, I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Running on Carbs podcast. And don't forget, go out and run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val, and I will see you next time. Have a great week.